Look, can I say that the last two speakers began to clarify confusion about rape and how rape is dealt with. And the first thing is that both Manju and Rhea dealt with rape by individuals, but also, and importantly, by the state. What we find in the anti-rape movement in the UK and often in the US as well, and other people will tell me if they have another experience, is that rape becomes a subject between men and women, and the state is completely off the hook. That is not our experience, and it therefore has not framed the struggle. I want to introduce first the two women from the anti-rape organizations that are based at Crossroads. Cristel from Black Women's Rape Action Project, and Lisa from Women Against Rape.
So I'm going to start with a great victory that we had just this week.
Okay, makes sense.
I'm going to start with a great victory that we had just this week. Brian Witte was found guilty of 3 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault in a He is a former captain in the paramilitary and a city banker.
Lovely.
All the women had been attacked after they had met him and were drinking with him. Very funny. And each reported to the police right away. Each time he was found, questioned, and although the authorities knew he had been reported more than once, he was let go. Women from Women Against Rape were in the trial every day, and we said at the end that the trial showed once again that with serial rapists, the police and CPS have a serial response. They believe the rapist rather than his victim. Good line that we got from Selma. The prosecution said that failure to charge earlier had emboldened him and made him feel untouchable. Exactly. One of his victims had contacted us last year. The police wanted her as a character witness in the trial, but they said it was impossible to reopen her complaint. As a result of our intervention, through meetings with the police and putting pressure on the CPS, which is the prosecuting authority for those who are not familiar with the legal system here, they're the people who bring the lawyers who take the cases to court. As a result of our meetings and pressure on them, her case was reopened and she gave evidence in the trial last month. What we learnt from the case is that there have been some changes, good changes. After 3 decades of campaigning, thank God, the judge was fair. He gave good instructions to the jury not to judge the victims by their behaviour, because trauma affects people in different ways. He said at the verdict, long may the jury system remain. Absolutely. But it was nail-biting for us because the jury was out for 7 days. We were really scared because her previous reports of sexual attacks were brought up by the defence to discredit her, and she was quite thrown when they asked her about it on the stand. They also said she was in debt and had lied so she could claim compensation. Nobody told the court that her reports were not false. They were just unprosecuted. Or that 23% of rape survivors have been raped or sexually assaulted 4 or more times, just like she had. If she had been the victim of 4 burglaries, she would have been given special protection as a vulnerable repeat victim. Not so with rape. She was treated with suspicion and discredited. She also happened to be African. As Selma was just saying, rape has been presented as a struggle between the individual man and the individual woman, when it's actually a struggle between the woman and the state. We do want some men put away, and we want the others on our side. That's how it looks to us as a grassroots organisation. The issue of rape has been made into an industry, when what we need is a movement demanding not only services, but justice and compensation. The conviction rate for rape is still 6.7%. Every week women are coming to us about a negligent and biased prosecution and investigation. They say the police didn't collect the evidence, or they lost it, or it wasn't presented forcefully in court, or the case was closed. If they don't like you, depending on who you are, they can do nothing. Or worse, they can treat you as a suspect rather than a victim and start investigating you. Particularly this happens to women and girls who are mentally ill, women seeking asylum, sex workers or other women with a criminal record, women who've made previous reports or who've made a complaint against the police, or women raped by their partners. One woman in our group is fighting for justice after her teenage daughter's rapist was found not guilty, partly because the police lost evidence. A big report came out in her case, which we helped pressurise to get, where they found that in the specialist rape unit where the police, come from, there were no detectives. Rape was being handled by junior police constables, and instead motor and street crime had been prioritised. We're sick of hearing that lessons have been learnt when they clearly haven't. We say that police and prosecutors and judges who don't enforce the law properly should be sacked. Injustice is not about lack of training or prejudiced juries, as they often say, to get themselves off the hook. It's about priorities. The other thing is, we've been doing a major campaign against women being prosecuted for so-called false allegations of rape. About 30 women were jailed in a 12-month period between 2010 and 11, accused of lying. They shouldn't have been prosecuted. Some of them we've been working closely with and have attended the trials. They're miscarriages of justice, but you never hear anyone say that other than us. Of those who admit they did lie, many have been victims of rape or domestic violence in the past. And this is a really dangerous backlash, undermining all the state protection that we've been able to win over the years. It skews the priorities, and it always means the authorities can look for things to show that women lied rather than gathered the evidence to prove their case, which is their job. And it scares women off reporting. Because it's so difficult to work your way through the system, we've done a self-help guide called Justice Is Your Right. And our major advice to women is, our first piece of advice is, don't go to the authorities on your own. Because what they do in your case depends on how much power you're seen to have.
Yes, yes.
And, just one quick thing. One of the major things that's happened in the last year is that the anti-rape movement has taken a new direction, pulled along by the slut walk movement, and I'm glad Anastasia, the 17-year-old who organised the London Slut Walk event, is here with us today. And others were here yesterday. And it really broke, the Slut Walk in London really broke with the established funded organisations that have turned into purely an extension of social services, in that they were determinedly pro-sex worker and they were anti-racist from the beginning. And, they worked with us to find out what are the demands that women are making, and they have taken up the demands and have been, really determined that they stand for change. They're not about just patching things up or adding a bit of sticky tape. They want things to change, and they say, just like we do, we demand protection and justice for all women, whoever we are.
Yes, thank you, Selma. And it is really fantastic to be sitting here with this. In my view, we're coming from the cold. We're absolutely coming from the cold, and we're going to take it back just now. I just want to say about a couple of aspects of BRAP's work. We abbreviate to BRAP. We work with women who are fighting for justice, black and immigrant women who are rape survivors or who've survived racist attacks, and have all commonly had their experiences dismissed and have suffered life-threatening treatment from the authorities who are meant to provide protection. So as a result of campaigning with women in this situation, we have always fought with women and always ready to work with women, you know, who, as to borrow Nikki's phrase, want to drive their case to the end, who really want to win, and who are ready to put everything about their lives in the same way that we're ready to put our resources. Because as the mothers of Argentina showed us, the only struggle you lose is the one you give up. And we've had some successes. I mean, notably, a big victory a couple of years back following a rise in racist attacks, in particular against Muslim and immigrant communities, which really continue now, you know, flamed by government legislation, policies and practices. We found it very hard to, you know, get the figures of racist attacks, and now it's almost impossible because they're completely lumped together in race-hate attacks. So there's a way of the authorities can completely hide what is happening to our communities. But there was a local Somali mother, a mother of 8, who had been systematically targeted on the estate by her white racist neighbour. And she was brutally assaulted in broad daylight by him in front of her children when they were coming home from school. He called her a nigger and a black bitch. And instead, her husband immediately called the police, but instead of them, you know, pursuing and arresting the perpetrator, they arrested him. So she and her family were determined to get justice, and they tried several local agencies without any success, and they happened to see our centre from the outside and came in. And we then spent working with Women Against Rape and Legal Action for Women, and really a very long time and a lot of intensive work to force the police to first of all interview her and find out what had happened, and then go after the perpetrator, instead of allowing an escalating harassment which went on literally a weekly basis for going on for a year. He was arrested but bailed and allowed to carry on. But because of the persistence both of the family and of our organisations, we were able to win a prosecution. He was taken to court for racially aggravated GBH, I think it was, but in fact was convicted only of the violent part because the CPS never properly produced the evidence, of which there was a wealth, including from the children, about the racism and the words that we used. So we know we can win, but you know, getting everything we want to win is always a question of pushing harder. And especially when the perpetrators are the police, to actually get a conviction and to get police officers behind bars for what they do, we know is difficult. But it really is down to how we're going to do it together as a movement, that we are going to win getting John Charles de Menezes' officers sacked and out of the police force entirely, or the guy that shot Mark Duggan. Another aspect of our work is working with women who are asylum seekers, and you know, even it doesn't matter whether we have papers or we don't have papers. We're the same black faces as far as the authorities are concerned, and they're going to treat us the same way. And in some respects, of course, you know, if what you're facing at the end of trying to get safety and protection is imprisonment and deportation, we always used to say that, you know, it would be horrendous if rape survivors reporting rape were actually locked up when they went to the police station. And that is what has been happening. You know, both women who are raped in this country, women who've been raped in countries they fled and are raped again in this country, have gone to report that rape and have been arrested and put in detention, and the next thing is on a plane unless there's some kind of a protest. Now, that's what's been happening. You know, when women are up against the wall, they have been protesting. There have been a number of very high-profile protests, hunger strikes in the detention centres, which we've been able to support, Women Against Rape and BRAP have been able to support and enable women to really shine a spotlight on what is going on inside these centres, from the disgusting treatment women are getting, being invaded, their privacy, they're locked up, the officers can just walk in no matter how you're dressed. We know that there's been rape inside of the detention centres, but it's very hard to be able to get that information out when the authorities deport the woman who's been raped. And that really is a way of hiding what's going on. But the press have really covered it. In the last hunger strike, there were 70 women who were kettled in a small area by the authorities when they had gone to protest about being detained for long periods of time without anything happening on their case. And the fact that they continued that protest and carried on, and the fact that the press, high-profile press like The Guardian and The Observer, were ready to really break with tradition and start to report what was happening, meant that we got a lot of support, and women got a lot of support from other organisations, church groups, No Borders, groups that have been campaigning quite consistently in support of asylum seekers, and things did change. But the battle is still on, to really remove the discriminatory controls that a lot of women face. That means that their cases are, the serial response, as you said, is to disbelieve, dismiss and deport. But we know we can stop a lot of that once people come together, and that's really down to us, because what happens to women who are as vulnerable as asylum seekers, of whom 70% seeking asylum are rape victims, is also what happens to us unless we come together to stop it.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Wintress, my sister from Guyana. Wintress is part of the Red Thread organization in Guyana, and just want to invite you all to welcome her.
Good morning. If you hear my voice kind of trembling, I'm crying inside. Never knew that this thing is so, especially from Rio, with the son that was forced to make love or have sex with his mother. Oh, terrible. I'm just crying. And then my own experience with my daughter, I don't know if I would speak or call on Ray Thread and somebody else, but I would try. Sam, I can try.
Thank you.
I am going to speak in her Ray Thread campaign for our Commissioner Henry Green to be dismissed from office after raping a working class mother of 3. On the 22nd of November 2011, Guyana's then Police Commissioner Henry Green was accused by a mother of 3 of raping her. From the newspaper account, the police refused to take any statement from her, thus forcing her to seek the assistance of a lawyer to get them to take her statement. After the story went public, the president asked for help outside of the Guyana police force to investigate the matter. The Jamaican government responded and sent a team of police detectives to help with the investigation. And the findings from this investigation were handed over to the Director of Public Prosecution, Ms. Shalama Ali Act. The DPP, on going through all the evidence given to her, advised the police to charge the commissioner for rape, which led to him filing an application to the Chief Justice in the High Court to block or stop the DPP from having him charged for rape. Green's affidavit supporting his application claimed that he had consensual sex with a woman after she sought his help in a police matter against her. The Chief Justice then asked the DPP to respond in 1 week why Mr. Green should be charged for rape. She responded, and the Chief Justice overruled her decision, saying that her reasons for allowing the charge were irrational. In his summing up, the Chief Justice criticized the character of the woman who was raped and did not mention anything about Henry Green. What Red Thread did? We organized a daily roving picket in front of the office of the President and the High Court to demand that the government dismiss Henry Green and not give him the privilege of resigning. We organized the picket to say to the public that rape is rape, regardless who commits it, and that they should take a stand against it, particularly when the rapist has power, and so that women in violent situations would not be more afraid to report violence against them to the police, because people had allowed a powerful man to get away with this violence against a woman. We wrote placards saying that Henry Green is guilty of rape, demanding that he should be charged and dismissed from being the Commissioner of Police, etc. I cut it because of the time, sorry. We wrote letters to 3 different bodies with responsibility for disciplinary action and appointments of members of the police force. 1, the Office of Professional Responsibility, Police Service Commission, Police Complaints Authority, calling for Green to be disciplined for abusing his office, since he had sworn an affidavit saying that he did have sex with a woman who had come to him as Commissioner of Police for help, but that the sex was consensual. Meanwhile, after waiting for 1 week and got no response, we sent a copy of the letter. After waiting for 1 week and got no response, we sent a copy of the letter to the newspaper. On the day the letter was published, excuse me, this was just written in this morning by Joyce. I'm not familiar with it. But I can tell you what they said out of my head.
Yes.
Sorry, Joy, I know you take the time. After we wrote these 3 authorities, only one of them replied, saying that they had no power to discipline the to discipline the commissioner. The other one just acknowledged our letter, and the other one did not even reply. Meanwhile, we continued the picket to get Mr. Green dismissed. But if I have a little more time, Sam, I do?
Not really, but
1 minute.
1 minute.
Yes. The thing that is bothering all of us home in Guyana is that we have this new bill called the Sexual Offences Legislation, which the then Minister of Human Services, Priya Manachan, along with the wider society, took time to implement to safeguard us, women and children who are being raped. Red Thread picketed 1 year in front of the office of the President to get that bill assented into law. Now, here we are in 2012, a Commissioner of Police raped a woman, and that bill is not being put into use. In the sexual legislation, he had to prove that the sex was consensual. And the Chief Justice was so wrong to overrule the decision of the DPP to say that that man should not be charged. He should be charged, lock away the key, throw it. Sorry, I'm very passionate about rape. He should, all those things because he has power. And as a grassroots woman, I feel cheated. I feel like we have no justice back home in Guyana. But Red Thread and other people and the international will continue struggling and fighting and demanding that grassroots women get their voices heard. Thank you.